Central Virginia. Are you ready to rumble? Fasten your safety belt and hold on tight. The community watchdog is in the house. This is The Schilling Show with your host, former city councilor Rob Schilling on News Radio 1070 WINA.
Already 977-1070. That's the phone number. The amazing Leon Oliver stands by to take your calls at 977-1070. Throughout the course of the program, all points of view are welcome, including and especially yours, and we do welcome your point of view. You can also send me an email, robs@wina.com, and we love to hear from you that way as well. I do monitor the email inbox during the course of the program so we can see if you have questions or comments. And don't forget, you can listen live online now. The Schilling Show is streaming to any point in the world with an internet connection, so anybody can check that out. Just go to schillingshow.com or WINA.com. There are listen live buttons on both places, and you have the opportunity to hear us wherever you are live. It has been an interesting time in America with all that's going on. There are things that we need to keep our eyes on, and particularly at the University of Virginia, the University of Virginia Medical Center. There are things happening there that are not pretty. There are things that they don't want to talk about, but we have no fear of discussing the topics here on the Schilling Show today. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show Sean Cannan, pro-life activist, and also Kelsey Hazzard, a UVA law student, to talk about the topic of abortion at the University of Virginia. And, you know, it just kind of astounds me that we're having this conversation because, they certainly don't advertise that service anywhere. Sean and Kelsey, welcome to the Schilling Show.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank you.
It's good to have you here. I guess I'd like to start out by just letting people know some of the facts about abortions at the University of Virginia, because I would imagine a lot of people in the audience would say, well, that's a state-funded facility. There must be some law against it. Why on earth are they performing abortions at the University of Virginia? What's going on, Kelsey?
Well, we have learned that University of Virginia has performed over 2,000 abortions at the University Hospital since 1988, which is actually the year that I was born. So all those children at the University of Virginia Hospital, their lives ending. We have worked to bring this to people's attention in an initiative. It's actually quite a long document, but if you were to break it down into sort of the three main concerns that we have. The principal one is just that abortions are being performed at all. You know, we're pro-life, and that's unacceptable. The second point is how these abortions are being funded. It's not terribly clear. As you said, this is a state-funded facility. The funding stream for the abortions is not clear. And in addition, those of us who are students at UVA wonder how our tuition factors into that. And then finally, there's the issue of informed consent, both for abortion and for some other reproductive health care. In particular, the university is not talking at all about some pretty major abortion risks. There's a documented link between abortion and preterm birth in later wanted pregnancies. Many women who have abortions want children someday, but just not now. And if they were to realize that they're putting their children who are conceived later at risk, they may very well reconsider.
You know, this is so interesting to me, and it's also very sad. And first, let's talk about item number 2 that you raised about the funding, because we saw the same thing with Planned Parenthood, an evil operation, if I've ever seen one, evil to the core. When they said, well, the money that's coming from the state, that's not funding the abortion side. Well, you know what? Anybody who has a business or runs a household knows that any money coming in from any source is enabling the activities in all other areas of that operation, whether it's directly funding it or not. If they get money in from the state, that means they can do all of these other things, whether or not it's targeted toward abortion. And I think the same thing goes for the University of Virginia. I mean, they're hurting for money. Your money that you're paying in tuition and state taxpayer dollars that are going into this are certainly underwriting this, because if they didn't do this, the money would be going to other places. So we need to let people know that it doesn't matter if they say it's directly funded or not, it's indirectly being supported.
Yeah, we did receive a response from the University of Virginia recently, even though we sent this petition quite a while ago. We just heard from them. And all they really did was to deny the direct funding, and they didn't address the issue of indirect funding or tuition funding.
Yeah, Rob, we asked them very specifically, both in the initiative and in a letter that me and Kelsey and our 7 colleagues on our managing board, we asked them very specifically and accused them of using student health funds, student health insurance, tuition, so on and so forth, because this is the information we've gotten from people on the inside of the hospital. The good news is that UVA Hospital is actually an ant farm of pro-life activists.
You're talking about on the inside, people.
On the inside, absolutely.
Well, that is good.
Not everyone there is happy about what their colleagues are doing.
Well, let's talk about how this is happening. You mentioned that this is taking place in the first place. I mean, that this is problematic that this university hospital is doing this. So I guess the question would be, how did you come across the information that they are providing abortions at UVA Hospital, and how are they marketing this? How do people know they can go there?
Well, there were a few women who approached me pretty much out of the blue to tell me their stories. They knew who I was. I'm not really sure how they knew that, but as you know, I was in here, 2 years ago when we put our website up. Maybe that was it. So then I started hearing some stories, that, they'll put their arm around you and they'll say, you need to get your degree before you have a child. And don't worry about the money, so on and so forth.
There's encouragement of this nature going on.
There's actually, the funding stream is actually even worse than you were just describing. It's not just the facility. We suspect that they are offering them for free or almost free and paying for it out of, student health insurance or whatever. We're endeavoring to find out about this now. And like I said, we asked President Sullivan very directly to give us those details, and she declined.
Now, we should say that her background is Catholicism. She's a practicing Catholic. Is that the case? That's what I understood.
That's really not where we are going with this initiative. If you look at our initiative, it's about a 5-page document, and we're not talking about religion, and we're not talking about politics. We're talking about science.
I think it is important, though, to note if somebody is practicing in a religion that says this is wrong, that you should anticipate receiving at least direct answers to your questions.
Sure. Along those lines, I can go along with that. But it's not my business what Dr. Sullivan does, on Sunday. Or on Friday or Saturday, for that matter.
I certainly understand that.
I have challenged her, and, the 8 of us, 9 of us, have challenged her to come up with some answers to these things. And I think Ms. Hazzard will agree with me. She ignored about, 11 out of our 14 points. She just ignored them altogether, including the preterm birth link.
Could you give us
probably their most heinous piece of misinformation.
Sean Cannan and Kelsey Hazzard are here with us talking about abortions at the University of Virginia. Could you give us some indication of the sorts of questions, maybe you have an example of 1 or 2 that were answered and some of the others that were ignored?
Well, the one thing that struck me was that they didn't at all deny doing abortions. In the first instance, they conceded that point entirely and simply said, well, we have Roe v. Wade, so it's, they're doing it and they see no problem with it. It's
interesting to note that it doesn't appear anywhere in any parent handbook or any discussion of healthcare anywhere in UVA's literature. So they, when John Castine and Leonard Sandridge arrived here, 20 plus years ago to do all this, Sandridge had actually been around a little before that. This was a very organized policy that they put into place. This was a very specific thing that happened, and it happened, between 1988 and 1991.
It was put into place. Do we know who exactly did that? You mentioned Castine and Sandridge. Was this their initiative? And if so, at whose behest? Do we know any of that information?
Well, we can presume. Yeah, we can presume that since they arrived about the same time, and James Turner and Christine Peterson and the rest of them, that the leaders of the healthcare infrastructure, I think it's pretty rational to presume that, if they arrived and this arrived at the same time, that it's probably them.
Okay, but we don't know that for a fact. We're just having to guess based on the timing.
No.
We were talking about some of the questions that were answered and some that were unanswered. Were there some that were just really hanging out there that you thought, why couldn't they answer this question directly? Anything come to mind?
The preterm birth link is something we really hammered away at, and they just decided, in my opinion, they decided, well, we don't have a good answer for this, so we're not going to give you an answer at all.
Mm-hmm.
The connection of, birth control pills to breast cancer, cervical cancer, and liver cancer, they didn't want to talk about that either. They just decided, well, okay, well, maybe there is a Mayo Clinic meta-analysis that shows that a college-aged woman who's never had a child before will increase her breast cancer rate by 44%. Well, we don't really want to talk about that. And we don't talk about it with our students, and we're not going to talk about it with you. That's essentially, Kelsey, am I right here? That's essentially the response that we got.
No, I agree. And I find it rather odd that they wouldn't respond to those things, because nowhere in this were we asking them to stop any kind of birth control distribution, or we were just asking for informed consent, which is a very basic principle of medicine.
And apparently that's too much to ask.
Yeah.
And UVA is not the only Virginia university. Let's talk about what's happening at VCU as well.
We have less data on VCU, given that the most of us in this are in the Charlottesville community, but we did learn that VCU also has an abortion problem. They've actually done double or triple the number of abortions that
close
UVA's
to quintuple. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a lot more. It's a much bigger city. And Students for Life of America, let's give them some props. They're the ones who broke this back in January by investigating these colleges and coming out and releasing a document on their website saying, hey, guess what, folks? Guess where your tax money and your tuition money is going?
Can you tell us how the numbers were ascertained? The 2,000, and then I think 9,000 was a number that you had sent over earlier regarding VCU.
All Sean had to do was say FOIA, and he got the numbers.
FOIA being the Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
The Virginia Department of Health was not happy about being asked the question. It was clear. And this was all done by email by me a couple of years ago. And all I had to do really was just, FOIA. And then all of a sudden, these numbers appeared, because at first they were telling me the data's not available. Data's not available. And I reminded them that actually it's the law for you to compile data. And then, we found out, they were trying to give me the Charlottesville numbers. But as you know, there's 2 other abortion facilities in Charlottesville. And I said, well, I want you to split them up for me. And they said, well, we don't want to do that. And I was like, well, guess what? You have to. And then all of a sudden, the numbers that UVA had been hiding in the greater Charlottesville numbers, all of a sudden it was like springtime and the flower blossomed. And, here are those numbers that we didn't want to give you.
And that was 2,000. What were the numbers? Do you remember offhand from Planned Parenthood itself here in Albemarle County?
No, I don't. I know that between, I believe it was 91 and 09, the UVA numbers are, what was it, 2480?
So over 2,000.
Yeah, 2480, and the numbers at VCU were at least triple that. You can see this on our document. We probably should...
Let's give the website for people who want to go check it out.
It's pretty simple, and it's pretty straightforward. It's uvalies.org. That is LIES, and then a / and initiative. And you can see our entire document. I think we should give our co-author, Siobhan Casey, some props. There are 3 authors. It's me, Kelsey, and Siobhan. Siobhan is actually active with Youth Defense in Ireland. She's in Limerick, so she couldn't be here today.
Oh, she has a good excuse.
Right.
All right, and do you have an email contact address as well?
Yes, her email contact is Nabios. I will spell that. N as in Nancy, AHBIOS @hotmail.com. And she'll be happy to hear from anyone who wants to add their name to our document. We've already got about 70, 80 people on it, but we are limiting it to people who went to Virginia colleges, current students, grad students, and alumni.
All right, I want to thank you very much for coming in and bringing the news to this audience. Sean Cannan and Kelsey Hazzard, I hope you'll be back. I think there's lots more to talk about. We want to see what happens as a result of this inquiry that you have made, and ultimately if there are changes at the University of Virginia regarding the abortions at the hospital. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll have you back again.
Thanks for having us.